absolutely. You know, I throw my hat into that, and you know, I'd love to be part of that because I know for a lot of guys, you know, myself included in that, I think, you know, whilst it's everyone's dream to go to WWE and things like that, I'm sure there's a big handful of us who would love the domestic scene to be even bigger and even greater. And if, you know, you can make really good money here in this country and be on TV, you know, who here wouldn't jump at that chance? So yeah, you know, well, I will be watching with a very keen eye to see what happens.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I don't know how if you'd been hearing or listening to it or the sort of follow up to it, but Flow Sports in America are pretty much, they're trying to sort of take quite a lot of these indie shows and get it under one banner and talk about a streaming service. But that sounds quite interesting as well, because again, like you say, it would kind of change the landscape in the fact that perhaps there's enough money for those indie guys to stay there, rather than as soon as an NXT call-up happens, you just go. You know, there'll be an option maybe for those guys to earn a decent living and not always have to sort of go to NXT as such. But do you think there's much in that? I mean, do you think that's something that could take off? Because if you get everything, I mean, the easier the access, I think, the better your chances are of something like this working, because people just want something in one place. With streaming devices and things like that, it's all sort of it's whatever comes fast really with people. That's how they want
Absolutely,
it. So,
you know, we're all about convenience, aren't we? So to have everything at your fingertips in one place, I think is a really intriguing idea. Whether it will happen or not, you know, it will be interesting. But again, you know, like I said, you know, about earning money here, you know, earning money in your own sort of without having to go to WWE, because actually, you know, you do need to look at WWE, and even though it's, you know, it's everyone's dream, but it doesn't always pan out brilliantly for everybody going to WWE. You know, not everyone can be the you know, WWE champion at the end of the day. So I always think I think, you know, for job security especially, I think it was always great back in the day when there was WCW and people had the options of going between the two, and even ECW as well. So I think it's good that guys can, you know, still go out and make a living and not have to be within the WWE system.
Sure. Okay, let's go to another. It's my regular listener. He always emails me, this guy. Jimbo, wrestler, squad number 9. It's an interesting name. As a wrestler yourself, RJ, how have you ever dealt with people who call what you do fake? Question mark. So I'll start. He's got a couple of questions here, but I mean, I'm guessing you probably come up against that somewhere or another through your career.
Okay, we'll do. I'll play it out in the best. I'll give the examples.
Like a little role play here.
All I need for you, John, is to ask me that question.
Okay, yeah, I'll be a typical sort of pub type dude.
That's it.
Stuff,
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah, that stuff you do, isn't it? It's all a bit fake, isn't it? All right.
Yeah.
Oh. I'll go and bother someone else.
That is, if anyone comes up to me and asks me that question, that is the response I'll get.
Yeah.
Because you then find that they then want to know a bit more, and then you can educate them, because only uneducated people about wrestling will ask that question.
Yes.
And usually they just haven't been educated on it. So that's what I do, and also people who come asking you that question are looking for you to defend it and come up with some really clever way. And all you just got to go, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can generally see the wind just die out of their sails, and they haven't got a clever retort after that. And then, because they haven't got a clever retort, they are then open to be talked to in a sensible way, in which you can explain the ins and outs of everything. So
yeah, that's a good answer, actually.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a very good answer. There's no comeback on that from myself. There, you can't get around
exactly.
it. So yeah, his second part of the question here is WWE landscape is changing in how fans perceive their stars. It now seems that WWE can package guys who look amazing yet still won't get the reaction like they used to. Considering in the last few weeks James Ellsworth of all people has already sold out Bill Goldberg on merchandise, do you think it's just down to fans appreciating different types of wrestlers I really enjoy watching you a lot more than I do some of these other guys. I wish they would give more to guys like you who seem to have great characters, very well polished, and work an amazing style. So there you go, quite a lot into that. But
No, thank you very much, first of all.
Yeah. As the, I mean, the perception of WWE fans in, like, WWE crowd is quite different to other crowds, I would say. But I mean, are they sort of like spitting out a lot of what gets thrown their way these days? And is that just society doing that, or do you think that's just WWE not doing a good enough job like they used to be able to do?
Well, you know, it's interesting because sometimes people talk about this like it's a new thing, and I don't think it is. It's not a new thing. Let's not forget how The Rock became The Rock. You know, they tried to force feed them. You know, they tried to force feed them a blue chip All American, and the crowd didn't want it. You know, and this was back in what 96, 95,
96 MSG. They. Rocky Maivia.
You know, 10 years ago, crowds are going, we don't like this, we want, and look what a success, he became. So, I think perhaps they're even more vocal now about what they like and don't like and things like that. So, and I think some of the best examples is when you can take what the crowd are saying, and you can I'll go back to the example of The Rock. I mean, how good was that when he turned it back on the fans and said, all the time I come out here, I try to do my best, and you just keep chanting "Die Rocky, die" and stuff like that. So I think it's about understanding, what the crowd don't like, and kind of taking it and almost turning it back on themselves.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I do think that, and we get lots of emails, obviously, about WWE on this podcast, but for instance, what happened, I don't know if you saw any of the last Raw that went up, but the segment with Brock Lesnar where they kind of sent him and Heyman out and they didn't get the reaction they was obviously looking for, even though it was his hometown. I'm not sure why they would have expected him to get that booed, but I don't like seeing stuff like that because it just doesn't seem like they're willing to quickly adjust something anymore. It's like we'll just stop it kind of thing and wait for when we can get the right reaction. Do you think that that's something new, or am I just thinking that it's new because I think they can be very fixed in their mindset. I think they can sometimes think like this is the story we're telling, and we're not changing regardless of what fans think. I don't think it always does them any favours. Like, I think that's a really good example you just brought up, because they were in Brock's hometown, weren't they? So so it was like, well, I'm not really sure why anyone's going to boo him when you know. And I think Brock's quite hard to boo anyway because he's such a cult figure. So I think, and it's a shame really because obviously I loved the Goldberg promo on Raw like however long week or two ago. That was amazing. Like the promo itself was absolutely brilliant from Goldberg. Yeah. Came off. I felt he. Sorry to butt in there. I felt he really came off really well. I wasn't sure what to expect on his return, but it wasn't like a scripted kind of thing. It felt like really emotional from Goldberg, and that his intentions were quite genuine. Absolutely, yeah. And so I thought he panned off quite well, but obviously knowing that Brock was going to be in his hometown a week later, I'm not sure that it was always going to be as clear cut as fans just chanting for Goldberg and booing Brock Lesnar, if you know what I mean. But do you think that they, like in the Attitude Era, and I know people always go back to that as the be all end all of stuff, but do you think that if that sort of thing had happened then, that they'd have just sort of gone through it and just seen where it takes them, as opposed to just sort of turn off kind of thing? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say really, because we're talking about completely different eras and different attitudes and a different product. I mean, it was a different product back then at that point as well. So it's very tricky to say. I just think that like I said, perhaps they could have planned that a little better. They could have maybe had a think around how can we still continue this feud without it. Because if they are trying to portray Goldberg as the face in this example, and Brock Lesnar as the heel, obviously that really wasn't the place to do it, and it wasn't the place to do that segment. So but I mean, like I said, I don't think I don't really think we're going to lose any traction from it. I think we're still going to get the match, and I think it's still going to draw good money and stuff like that. So you just have to swings and roundabouts, I think, is the answer on that. Absolutely.
One, so.
Yeah, let's take a final question. This is from Julian. Hi, RJ. My question for you, after listening to you on the last interview on the podcast, you mentioned that WWE plays a big part in the entire wrestling industry. My question is, given that WWE seems to always bring back big names, even guys like Goldberg that haven't been seen for 12 years, / even rumours about Shawn Michaels, a lot of the part-time guys are the biggest draws. Do you think that's a knock on the entire industry when WWE themselves are having to push part-time guys or bring guys out of retirement? Question mark.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's, we're at a point where those guys were the iconic guys of their generation. Mm-hmm. Who's not to say in, I don't know, 20 years they bring AJ Styles back for something where it won't have the same effect. Do you know what I mean? Like, Shawn Michaels and Goldberg were so iconic for their time. You're always going to get that part nostalgia, part appeal of their name from back in the day, which is going to be a good thing. Mm-hmm. I do think that they could, maybe do a better job of like building some of their stars, their current stars. It's a shame that Goldberg isn't coming back for a match with someone who is more, who's more full time on their current roster rather than someone else like Brock Lesnar, who's more, who's a part-time person. Yeah. And I think that's possibly where some people have that kind of issue. Whereas, I think, if the rumours are true and Shawn Michaels came back to Vegas, AJ, I think that would be great, because obviously AJ is current and AJ is a full-time roster member at the moment. And I think that's even better. So I think that's the slight downside, is that they're not bringing back these big names to work with current roster members, which is the way I think it should go. But but considering what a bit of a car crash the last Brock Goldberg match was, hopefully this one will do far better.
Yeah, surely. Can only get better on that one. We'll wait and see. Given maybe if the reaction isn't right, they'll just turn the lights out and move on with another match. You never know. Yeah. The way it could go. Just finishing up on this interview of you, RJ. Yourself, you talked about when you come back and you've changed and you've actually gone back to sort of doing things that you first started doing when you broke into the business. Obviously you're working with different kind of, a lot of new faces around the industry at the moment in the UK scene. Is it still as good as we're all being told? Like the talent coming through, is it a good crop? And has anyone really caught your eye since you've been back in particular that you've had the chance of working with?
Oh, there's loads of great guys out there at the moment who I haven't actually, had the chance to work with yet. But there's loads. Like Joe Connors at the moment. Joe Connors is a phenomenal talent. We've had some tag team matches together in the past, but he's like the current WCPW champion. He's just doing phenomenally. And what a difference! Like physique-wise, Joe Connors in the last 2 years has got to be one of the most improved physiques in British wrestling for sure. Chris Ridgway is another guy I've had my eye on for quite a while now. Pete Dunne as well. All these guys. There's loads of guys coming up from the Progress Training School who are really great as well. So there's lots of guys on the scene at the moment I'd like to have matches with. Fingers crossed. Time will tell, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, and just going back, I know you said you haven't got any sort of goals, that you want to get, to the high levels or anything. But are there any sort of short goals that you have? Do you have a sort of thing where you're set up when you know when the end game is coming? Do you want to are there things on your list that you would like to achieve before that, or do you just take it as it comes?
A bit of both, really. But at the moment, I think one of my biggest goals is trying to wrestle more outside of England. Like I'd love to go do some shows in Wales, in Scotland, in Ireland, around Europe. Yeah. Dare say even America and stuff like that. Anywhere really. I think I'd really like to, before I wrap things up permanently, is to fly out a little bit more and do a few more shows outside of the country.
Sure. Yes. Well, I think you've got every chance in general, RJ, because I've watched you now for a long time, and I've always felt you've had your character down to a T with the RJ Singh character. I just really enjoy